With the money that I won for taking the government to court, for stealing my family, stealing my name, imprisoning me as a child, I bought an apartment in Clapton, which is where I've just come from, which is where I understand Mr. Pinter lived. The decorators are in at the moment. I'm living out of a bedroom. And that's going to go on my wall. And that means something. Dear Lady Antonia Fraser, what's the responsibility of the writer in 2019? What is my responsibility to myself and to the wider community? On the evening that I received the news that I had won this most prestigious and personal prize, I was invited by the Ethiopian Institute for Leadership, Communication and Organisation, the EILCO, to a reception at the embassy in London. It was the 16th of April 2009, and I would like to thank the ambassador for being here, the ambassador for Ethiopia for being here today. It means the world to me. So the event was entitled A Prelude to World Press Freedom Day at the Ethiopian Embassy in London. His Excellency, Mr. Fessaha Shawel Gebre, Ethiopian ambassador to the UK, announced that Ethiopia is proud to host the 26th World Press Freedom Day in Addis Ababa this year to affirm his country's commitment to press freedom. In attendance were English PEN, the International Observatory for Human Rights, and many more non-governmental organisations. While listening to the speech, at that speech, I received a text from my publisher saying these words: "Congratulations, you have won the PEN Pinter Award 2019. As that happened, the first person I called was Fiammetta Rocco. Fiammetta had no idea where I would be when I received the text from my publisher. Nor did English PEN, nor did the embassy, nor did my publisher, nor did I. The moment I saw that message on my phone, that all of those stars aligned, was captured on film at the embassy, and I'd like to show it to you. Is that possible, Hannah? I'd like to show you that piece of film just now. I think I just received the text, and then I looked at it and thought, it's true.
I'm so happy that we are all going to Ethiopia. There are about 10 of us going to Ethiopia in about two weeks' time. And for me to go back to Ethiopia again, because I was not in Ethiopia for about 30, 40 years. So it is a big deal for me as well. And it's a big deal for many of us.
Got it forever. All the stars aligned as they have in my life, from my name meaning the question why, before I had published 2 books of poetry with Blood Axe and with my beautiful laundrette. I don't know why I just wanted to say that, but my beautiful Jamie Bing and Canongate books. But Lady Antonia Fraser, I'd like to take a selfie right now with you and the audience so that I can capture this treasured moment. I'm going to come down, is that okay? And I just want to tell you, I'm going to send this out to all 3 of my followers so they'll be even more famous. We can do it here. We're holding hands, and I'm just going to do that. You can smile in the background. Thank you. Thank you. I'm pressing send. Our moment is held in the digital atmosphere forever. There are more words passing between more people at this time than since the beginning of time. It's an exciting time to be a writer. We can cross space and time in seconds. It's August the 18th. I can't tell anybody that I've won the PEN Pinter Prize. I'm at the East African Literary and Cultural Studies Conference in the city of Bahir Dar in northern Ethiopia, where academics from universities throughout the world will deliver their research in papers ranging from Philomena Odi Minata on the quest for women in contemporary novels to Rami Gabadamosi on love, technological murder, and the nature of horror. I'm about to deliver the keynote address, The Writer as Witness in the Court of Culture. It's September the 3rd. I'm backstage at the Royal Court Theatre after launching my memoir, My Name is Why. It's a sellout, Lady Antonia Fraser. And there was a standing ovation as well. I took a picture. I remember being on this stage with Mr. Pinter at this very venue in 2006. I should have said hello. I absolutely love it when people say hello to me in the street. I didn't. I was slightly intimidated. I let my ego get in the way.
You say hello.
What is the responsibility of the writer in 2019 to himself, in this case, and to the wider community? How can the writer defend himself and others against false representation in this age of instant storytelling, instant news, instantaneous truth and lies? How can we protect ourselves against identity theft? In 2015, I received the files documented the first 18 years of my life, and I immediately took the authorities to court for stealing me from my family, from my country, stealing my name, imprisoning me as a child, and throwing me out alone with no support after 18 years, and closing down my memory. It took 3 lonesome years until the authorities settled out of court, and I settled in to writing my memoir, My Name is Why. Since publication on August 29th, a total of 43 days to now, I've been on tour in the United Kingdom. I've spent only 5 days in my own bed, and here I am in the British Library as writer. Here I am in the British Library as writer and witness, from the Royal Court to the King's Cross in London, England, Europe, the world, the solar system, the universe, the multiverse. My word, this library is a citadel to fake news, and yet a celebrant of integrity and truth. What is called history to some will always be a liar's tale to others. 2 different readers will see 2 different tales, just like in my files. The data stays the same, but what it is saying is different given time. Time changes things. As Mr. Pinter alluded in his Nobel speech, in 1958, I wrote the following: there are no hard distinctions between what is real and what is unreal, nor between what is true and what is false. A thing is not necessarily either true or false. It can be both true and false. I believe that these assertions still make sense and do still apply to the exploration of reality through art. So as a writer, I stand by them, but as a citizen, I cannot. As a citizen, I must ask, what is true? What is false? He collapses time to make the point. We are time travelers, time machines, and books are the portals. My memoir takes a look at the records of my life and asks the reader, as a citizen, me, what is true and what is false, such as it is with the letters in the files which are in my book. Did you know that there is a child, a prince, no less, trafficked from Ethiopia, who is buried in the grounds of Windsor Castle, a foster child? It happened almost 100 years before my birth. His name is Alemayehu Theodros, Prince of Ethiopia, son of Emperor Theodros and Empress Tiruak. His family have begged for his return to Ethiopia. The drug of power elicits delusions of grandeur. The social worker that stole me from my mother named me illegally after himself. The hallucinatory texts of history are here. The sun never sets on Britain. Only now, today, the sun is setting as the final detoxification from the drug of power, of empire, makes the body of our United Kingdom convulse. So let me tell you the story of the little prince. How did the authorities steal him away, and how did he die at such a young age? This is a lesson from history. In 1866, do you know what? If this was a documentary on television, it starts to scroll down now. These facts on here. In 1866, you can see it, can't you? Robert Cornelius Napier embarked on a quest which led to a battle to free British diplomats from Ethiopia, where they were under house arrest by Emperor Childros. It was a one-sided, brutal massacre. 2 British soldiers died. As troops finally stormed the castle in Magdala, Emperor Childros took his own life. He did it in honour of his country on April the 13th, 1868. The inscription on the gun with which he killed himself was from Queen Victoria. They were friends. British soldiers tore strips off him. British soldiers tore strips of cloth from his body like hyenas until he lay naked, and finally they cut locks of his hair as keepsakes. In a letter written by a Captain Speedy, a letter in this library, Speedy describes the battle in detail and the moment he saw the body of King the Emperor Childros. We must not say the king had killed himself, he wrote. Speedy was suggesting Napier lie about the knowledge of the noble king's choice not to die at the hands of his captors. The British army then looted, burned, and pillaged the sacred texts and artifacts of Victorian times. As Jurga Waldeus writes on June 2018, the stolen treasures amount to pure vandalism, a theft of knowledge and a crime against the current Ethiopian generation who are dispossessed of their intellectual heritage and history. The entire treasury was looted. 200 mules and 15 elephants were needed to carry all the looted bounty. What couldn't be taken was set on fire. On the way back, soldiers held auctions to divide the loot. Richard Holmes alone acquired 350 manuscripts for the British Museum. They then set off for the coast, and with it 3 Ethiopians, the Queen Mother, her son Prince Alamaihu, and his teacher, were told the following as facts. Firstly, the Empress Chirawork died of an illness on the journey, and secondly, that the Prince Alamaihu, in his arrogance, banished his teacher and told him to return. He was 7 years of age. And finally, we are supposed to believe that Emperor Childros had requested the captors take his child, to England alone. Prime Minister Disraeli wrote to Queen Victoria to lobby her for a peerage for Robert Napier, who is now known by his full title on the statue near the Royal Society, to which he became a fellow, and to where his statue is within a mile of where I stand now. Robert Napier, 1st Baron Napier of Magdala. The looted Ethiopian artifacts and sacred objects are in the Victorian and Albert Museum, and the clothes of the Empress are in the British Museum. The orphaned prince is buried in the grounds of Windsor Castle. Captain Speedy took Prince Alamaihu to his home in the Isle of Wight and claimed a stipend from the British government, much like a foster parent. He also claimed to love Ethiopia, often dressing in Ethiopian clothes. He took the prince to see the Queen Victoria on the Isle of Wight, who took a shine to the young boy. But at 18 years of age, the stipend stopped from the government, who didn't really want him fostered by Speedy, who championed him anyway. And so Speedy's love and care stopped. And he sent the prince to the north of England to stay with a doctor, Dr. Arthur Ransom, in the cold north of England, in Leeds. Prince Alamayu died aged 18 in Leeds, in England, on the 14th of November, 1879, of pleurisy, known as the poor man's illness. There is a letter which Alamayu wrote and which Alula Pankhurst, son of Richard Pankhurst, son of Sylvia Pankhurst, told me about, in which Alamayu said he believed he was being poisoned. A brass plaque in the nave of St. George's Chapel at Windsor bears the words written by Queen Victoria, "I was a stranger and ye took me in." He was not taken in, and he certainly wasn't a stranger. The Ethiopian government have requested again and again that his remains be returned to his family and home of Ethiopia. The irony is that if his remains were in one of our museums, he would be returned, as this is museum policy. But because the poor boy is buried in Windsor Castle, which is property of the Queen, it seems impossible. In this institution, the British Library, are the letters. Prince Alamayu was the first child stolen from Ethiopia and brought to England in Victoria times, and 100 years later, I was the last. We are told that his body will be difficult to define amongst the others, but surely this must be questioned, given Windsor is probably one of the most carefully managed pieces of land in the United Kingdom. Regardless, I can assure you, if the shoe were on the other foot, the British and certainly the Queen would do their utmost to get the king, to get their prince back. This is about power, not just the prince. Sacred artifacts are here. In July the 11th of this year, the Guardian newspaper's Dalia Alberg writes, Abi Samuel Berhanu, who has campaigned for the return of looted artifacts, wrote to Westminster Abbey, "As you know, the tabot is the foundation of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and is what sanctifies and consecrates a church building. The tablet, is believed by Ethiopian Christians to be the dwelling place of God on earth, the mercy seat described in the Bible and the representation of the Ark of the Covenant. Every church has at least one tabot, which when consecrated is kept in the Kedesan, Holy of Holies, where only the clergy may enter." He asked whether a visiting Ethiopian archbishop could arrange a viewing of the chapel and its tablet. Geoffrey replied of Westminster, "I must stress that the Dean and Chapter is acutely aware of the sensitive nature of the tablet. Because of the sensitive nature, steps were taken to ensure the tablet, which is in a very sacred place, was properly covered and could not be seen by anyone. We have no plans to change these arrangements." Berhanu wrote, "Are you able to answer the rest of the questions I asked?" Geoffrey replied, "Thank you for your email. The Abbey will not be elaborating any further." This struggle to try to retrieve sacred Ethiopian artifacts echoes in the process my mother, Lemn Sissay, faced in her communication with local authorities. You can read her letter to Wigan Social Services in full in my memoir. But the essence of her question was this: how can I get Lemn back? I want him to be with his own people in his own country. I don't want him to face discrimination. The letter she received in response ignored this very direct question. Dear Miss Sissay, I write to inform you that Lem is still in my care and is accommodated in a very good foster home. There is a strange split reality here. The social worker has already named me Norman, and yet he calls me Lem when writing to my mother. He answers none of her questions, so I ask myself still, what is the truth and what is the lie? Real knowledge is felt experience fully lived out, hammered out, felt out, soldiered and made into something crafted. My poems are my artifacts, testimonies to my survival. I know some things. I know life is not worth living if there is no one that you would die for. It is why I spent my adult life searching for my family and to prove what happened to me. I know that I am not defined by my scars, but by the incredible ability to heal. I know that generally speaking, people only define themselves by their colour when they are in the minority. I know that I am not defined by darkness, but by the light which defines it. I know that anger is an expression in the search for love. I know that the British stole our sacred objects from a country it had no claim to. I know that this month of October 2019, Manchester Museum, a part of my great university, the University of Manchester, was the first UK museum to repatriate secret and sacred objects to Aboriginal communities in Australia. I know that we may never return the prince's remains to Ethiopia. I know that our queen is in something of a bind regarding our prince. But there are written words and tablets here and in Westminster Abbey, here in this library, sacred objects to the people and the Church of Ethiopia. On November the 22nd, 2015, at his home in Addis Ababa, the last words spoken to me by Professor Richard Pankhurst, father of Helen Pankhurst, father of Alula Pankhurst, son of Sylvia Pankhurst, in Addis Ababa, where he lives, where he had a state funeral, the last words he said to me was, "Get the manuscripts." It's 6:30 a.m. on Thursday, 10th of October. It's last night I presided over Foundation Day at the University of Manchester as the first British Ethiopian collection of molecules chancellor. Our president and vice chancellor, Dame Nancy Rothwell, spoke of the PEN Pinter Prize. This is a great honour for me, dear Lady Antonia Fraser. Mr. Harold Pinter used his Nobel speech to speak beyond himself to the injustices. I have failed in speaking beyond myself, but of injustices I've spoken of the prints and the letters here in this library, in the sacred tablets of written and spoken word in the British Museum and Westminster. The Ethiopian government has been noble in its requests to the Queen and to the government. The National Army Museum has been noble in returning the lock of hair from Emperor Theodros. The tablets of written words, these sacred artifacts upon which Ethiopians pray, for these to be returned to Ethiopia, to their rightful home, would be one simple way of writing a letter to the past to say, "Cursed be anyone who moves his neighbour's landmark." It's 7:48 on the 10th of October. Press send. One more thing. Lady Antonia Fraser, I'm going to use your full name, always. You wrote to me, and I have the letter. I've taken it everywhere with me. I took it to Ethiopia. I took it throughout my tour, meaning to open it at some point. And I haven't opened it. And there's something about receiving a letter which means that it gets to the heart and the heart of the matter. I'll choose my moment, if that's okay. And I just want to thank you. Thank you. There are so many Ethiopians here. I'd like to, and this is the ambassador, and thank you so much for being here. I came from Wigan. I was born in Lancashire in a small place, and I didn't know that my name means why. My name was Norman. I only found out a year ago when I read a poem called The North Star for the Great Exhibition of the North on the Millennium Bridge in Newcastle. I only found out then by Googling it that Norman means man of the North. I didn't know that my name Lemn means the question why when I was a poet, when I became a poet. So I had to go back to Ethiopia to find my family and familiarise an entire country with the fact that I'm a writer and I write poetry, and that is what I do. And so I am, to my people, the poet who found his way back home, whose name is Why. That is incredible. By the way, people in Ethiopia don't call their children questions. Just so you know, just so you're not thinking, this is some cultural thing which is... it's not. So not only have I had to do that, but I've had to come back here as a poet, as a published poet, and try to get my story to be understood by the people who, would say to me, "Oh, you're going back to find your roots." I wasn't going back to find my roots. I was going back to find my mother, my father, my sisters, my brothers, my aunts, and my uncles. And you will know what it's like to want to find your roots if I take those away from you. Not only them, but the memory of them. That is what I didn't have at 21 years of age when the Guardian newspaper said Lemn Sissay has success written all over his forehead. And the literary London may have seen that and thought, oh, we've got a new a new arrival. And all I wanted to do was to go back and to use any resources I had to find my family. So at the same time of being recognised, I was unrecognised in myself. I wasn't part of the Caribbean community. I wasn't part of the African community. I wasn't part of the Northern community. I wasn't the child of Ted Hughes. I didn't have that narrative. I had none. None. Somebody once said to me, I said, whenever I'm in a newspaper, it's recognition that I was alive at some point in time. And what I was saying is that family, for all its dysfunction, what it does is it recognises you. You can fight with that recognition for all of your life. But I had nobody to recognise me, to see me. Any award I got, any award was a recognition of everything that I did not have. So it was counter. So when I said this to somebody, that to be in a newspaper was to be relative, to have a point where I could say, I lived then, and there's the proof. In lieu of family, that was fundamentally important to me, and the person just didn't get it. They were like, yeah, but you just love your name being in a newspaper. They did not have the language to understand what I understood that I needed to live. So I fought and I used every bit of resources from poetry to find my family. Nearly self-destructed as well. A little bit of that was going on as well. Of course it was. Why would the boy with absolutely no family think of himself as worth anything every time he's recognised? Why would he? It's so big that it was impossible. It's like trying to prove that you're invisible without having a voice to speak. What is it like to have nobody, no relativity to your past? So, there. So I, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be shouty. We're not here to be shouty. Well, we're here to be what we are. And do you know how you can get paper to all get the same level? You tap it at the top like that. When I was 19, with no qualifications, I went to Manchester and I applied for a job as a literature development worker for the Caribbean community, the second one in the entire country. And I had not one qualification other than a few CSEs. And they asked me the question, how are you going to find out about black writers? Because there are none, but we want you to develop it. That's why you're developing it. It wasn't, they were saying, we want somebody to develop this area. And I said, I will go knock on people's doors. I'll go to the post office. I'll go to the newsagents. I'll go to the churches and the mosques. And I did. And that organisation, Culture Word, as part of Common Word, the community publishers, is still there to this day. And do you remember we published the Book of Black Women's Poetry? We published gay writers. We published, thank you, your witness. Yes. And I'm very proud of the job I did there. But I got it. I got that job with nothing. And that's where I learned that if you ever get a lot of paper, just tap it. Just like that. I was going to read a poem. I'm not going to now. I would rather. That's an old one. For any authors out there, that's a cracker. Let's get to a chapter. You say, well, I was really going to read this chapter, but I'm afraid we're out of time. I just would like to say, I have to read a poem now, don't I? I'm sorry, I actually do. I know that I could walk off and people would be like, that was great, but he didn't read any poetry, you know what I mean? Just because I said that. I am going to read, this is my 15-hour poem. I am going to read this. I am going to read this at this event, actually. It's called, no, I'm not going to read that. I'm going to read... No, I'm not going to read that. I'm going to read... It's called Morning Breaks, and it's about morning breaking. And for any of you who are like budding new poets, this is how to lose your audience very slowly. You peak and then you just generally ruin it. This is called Morning Breaks, and it's about everything that I've just talked about, and then some. They always said I was over the edge. And now I really am, I'm over the edge. But as I dropped in a gasp of air, I grasped a branch that I hoped had its roots in the rock or rock-solid roots. But there's a storm's coming, a stunning storm. Thickening ink spills and swills on a bleating paper sky. A crowd of rain on the horizon staggers nearer. I sway so, I know so, I slip a little more. I sway so, I know so, I grip a little more. These tender fingers in a clenched fist. I must have slipped my back when I fell, my back. It hurts like a howl. It stings like a scowl. It weeps and stings again, and the skin splits and spits from my spine sides. Under pain develops muscles that create mouths that simulate sounds of whole cities screaming. There's a storm coming, a coming storm. Dust spits from the cliff top into my river eyes, forcing tears over the banks to flood me. I will not drown in them. I will not drown. I am hanging on. I am hanging on. In the zip of a thick ribbon of wind, a god or a devil appears floating in front of me. And he tells me in the hunch of a New York accent, let go. Let go. Death is the beginning of the end of 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 the beginning of the end. And he continues for 41 days and 41 nights. And in a crack of lightning, the devil or the god has vanished. At the end of the beginning of the end, nothing more to concentrate on but a storm, the sky and my breaching back and the cliff and the edge and the uprooting branch and my knuckles so sore, cracked and numb, they favour a knot of bleeding wood. If I look down, and I do look down, I can see that blood has poured from my back, seeped along the smoothness of my backside, slid under me, coiled its way seductively around my thighs, my knees, my ebonized legs. I watch these red tears fall forever and transform into explicit flowers as they reach the floor. I will not become one. I am hanging on. I am hanging on. Whispers from above me. From above me, whispers gather. The cliff ledge lined with edgy people of all colours, some humming, Amazing Grace. Others simply staring. Some I saw pointing down at my back. A bearded man with his hand on a Bible or a red book or a leather book or a white book or a revolutionary book shouted down to me in sermonic tones, deeper than the sea, "Let go! In the name of fuck, let go!" A nervous follower peeps over the edge. "There's someone down there. They'll catch you." And before I get a chance to answer them, they erupt into a sky-shattering, "Someone's crying low. Let go. Someone's crying low." The harmony of those collective voices woke the spirit of the sky and they threw crosses at me. It's raining crosses. I look down past my feet. A devil or a god, a man the size of a pea, is mouthing the words up to me. "Let go!" Night time was approaching. Breathless I whispered, "I will not fall, never hope, never have, never will not fall, never have, never will not fall." And as quick as they came is as quick as they were gone. But I'm hanging on, I'm hanging on, I'm hanging on. Darkness cloaked the horror of nighttime, of gangrenous spirits that fed upon open wounds. As lightning struck, I saw glimpses of their faces, demons whose countenance had slipped, whose fingers had stretched, whose nails had curled, whose breath stank so viciously that I spewed into the sea. My mantra, I am hanging on, I am hanging on, I am hanging on, throughout darkness and fear until sunrise and the stillness of morning breaking. I was a silhouette, hanging from a branch against a chalky cliff, only the sound of my trickling blood and the breaking back and my moaning sky for comfort. My shadow stretched across the cliff like a script title on handmade paper. The sulking storm retreated to the horizon to recollect, even the sea trying to throw off its reflection. And I listened more to the tearing of my back flesh as I hanged, the flapping wet skin of my bloodied back as it hanged. Tears painted salt veins along my ebonized skin. As that stark sunlight skidded across a bloodied sky, I sensed the presence of two symmetrical shadows descending. They stretched seemingly, even pushed back the clouds seemingly. I felt them push warm air into my face seemingly. I saw them in the corner of each of my eyes seemingly. Magnificent wings seemingly. And I felt new muscles in my back and my chest expand with air, a new air and a new spirit, and further and further, and there, with not a soul around me, I unpeeled my tender fingers from that dew-drenched branch. I let the sun pour into my eyes, and finally, after years, I let go. Why? Because I was growing wings all the time, and I can fly.